What if the woods you've known for years suddenly turned hostile? What if a simple camping trip turned into a nightmarish encounter with something otherworldly? It all began on a crisp autumn evening, with the sun setting low over the horizon and painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My friends and I had an annual tradition of embarking on a weekend camping trip, escaping the city life to immerse ourselves in nature. This year, we chose a remote area known as Old Woods, a place we had visited countless times before, filled with laughter, shared stories, and memories. As we drove towards the campsite, the vibrant colors of the trees wrapping around the road filled us with nostalgia. I could hear the excited chatter from the back seat as my friends teased each other about past camping trips. There was Jack, the jokester, always with a laugh in his pocket, Lisa, the brave-hearted one who loved adventures, and Mark, the nature enthusiast, forever eager to spot wildlife. I felt a sense of warmth in our camaraderie, the kind that only deepened during these little escapes. Upon arrival, we were greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of the forest, birds singing their late afternoon melodies, the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, and the delightful smell of damp earth. We quickly set up our tent, a process we had performed many times before, but the ease of it didn't diminish our excitement. We unpacked our gear, and with the sun beginning its descent, we prepared to gather firewood for the evening. As twilight painted the forest in deep blues and purples, we huddled around the campfire we had started, flames crackling merrily. We shared stories and roasted marshmallows, indulging in sweet treats that turned our lips sticky. Time seemed to slide away, lost in laughter and the warmth of the fire. But as the stars began to glitter high above, the atmosphere shifted. The once familiar woods grew dark and ominous, shadows deepening with every flicker of our fire. It was during one of our laughter-filled moments that the idea struck us to venture deeper into the woods, away from the safety of the firelight. After all, what's a camping trip without a little adventure? "Let's find the perfect spot to tell ghost stories," Lisa suggested with a grin, and we all agreed, excited by the thrill of wandering into the unknown. The group of us grabbed flashlights and made our way into the woods, the fun atmosphere keeping our anxiety masked. As we walked, I couldn't shake off a strange sensation, a feeling that the trees were closing in around us, as if they were leaning in to listen. But dismissing it as mere nerves, I pressed on, egged by my friend's excitement. We stumbled upon a small clearing that seemed perfect, a break in the dense trees that offered us a glimpse of the night sky and the promise of dead leaves crunching beneath our feet. We settled down, blocking the small beam of moonlight with our bodies. Ghost stories unfolded, each one darker than the last, as the fear in our hearts grew alongside the tales we spun. Then came the moment that changed everything. As we were gathering our things to head back to camp, we noticed something lurking in the shadows, a cabin, half hidden by overgrown bushes and darkness. It looked abandoned, its wooden planks worn down by time and the elements. Jack nudged me, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Come on, let's check it out." The others hesitated, glancing at one another, but ultimately the thrill of the unknown outweighed the fear. We approached the cabin cautiously, our flashlights flickering against the windows, revealing the broken glass and peeling paint. The door was ajar, creaking as if it had been waiting for us all along. What awaited inside sent shivers down my spine. Dust drifted through the air like whispered secrets as we stepped inside, our flashlights illuminating the remnants of a life once lived, old furniture, a dusty fireplace, and framed photographs lining the walls. But the images within were unsettling. Portraits of families, their faces twisted in expressions of terror, as if they had glimpsed something unimaginable. "Okay, this is creepy," Lisa whispered, her earlier bravado flickering. But curiosity anchored us in place. Each photograph we examined seemed to tell a different story of dread, and a strange feeling settled over me, a sensation like being watched. Suddenly we felt it. The air grew colder, heavy with an oppressive silence. That's when we heard it, a series of deliberate footsteps outside, crunching leaves underfoot. My stomach dropped as the sound approached, echoing within the hollow space of the cabin. "What was that?" Mark exclaimed, his voice breaking as we all turned toward the door. The footsteps stopped. Our laughter evaporated, replaced by a suffocating stillness, and for an agonizing moment, we all shared the same thought. We weren't alone. Before we could react, the door slammed shut, rattling the very foundation of the cabin. Panic surged through our group, and we began to pound on the walls, feeling utterly foolish and trapped. "Let us out," I shouted, my heart racing. But in a haunting whisper, we heard a voice seep through the wood, a hoarse hiss that sent chills down our spines. "You shouldn't have come here." Now we were frozen, the weight of its tone hanging in the air. Who or what was outside? I turned to my friends, desperation pooling in our wide eyes. Just as hope began to dwindle, the door creaked wide open, revealing a figure standing robustly against the dim moonlight. The figure was tall and shadowy, an outline blurred against the night. With every ounce of courage, I stepped forward. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice unexpectedly strong despite the fear coursing through me. The shadow loomed closer, but it didn't respond. Instead, it simply stared. The unnerving depth of those eyes felt as if they could see into our very souls. There was an unnatural stillness that enveloped us, the air thickening with unspoken dread. Suddenly, without warning, the growling noise erupted from the figure. It was a chilling, guttural sound that echoed unnervingly in the hollow wooden cabin. My heart raced as the lurking thoughts of what we had stumbled upon enveloped me. Something primal and ancient that did not belong to this world. In a panicked frenzy, we turned to escape, racing through the open door into the cold night air. We didn't stop running until the warm glow of our campfire came into view. If you're enjoying the unfolding story, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. Everyone loves a good campfire tale. Once back at the campsite, we collapsed around the fire, breathless and scared. The flames crackled, illuminating our wide eyes and trembling hands. We felt foolish for having run, for allowing fear to dictate our actions. But beneath that facade of bravado lingered an undeniable terror. The forest felt different somehow, as if it were alive with darker forces watching from the trees, whispering secrets that echoed around us. "What do you think it was?" asked Jack, staring into the flickering flames as if seeking answers from the fire itself. It occurred to me that we hadn't even seen the figure clearly, only felt its menacing presence. I shuddered at the thought, my heart still racing from our encounter. "It has to be some prank," Lisa said, attempting to be rational in light of our panic. "A person trying to scare campers away from the area." But we all sensed the impossibility of that explanation. The growl, the oppressive air. It felt far too real, far too chilling to be just a prank. Mark leaned in, whispering as if the darkness could grasp our words. "What if it's cursed? The cabin. It could be haunted, and we might have disturbed something." He glanced over at me, his expression serious. "We need to leave tonight." The thought of packing up and driving through the dark forest was just as terrifying as whatever we had encountered. And face that thing again. I shook my head, anxiety tightening around my chest like a vice. Maybe we should just stay here for the night and leave first thing in the morning. Reluctantly, we agreed, our hearts heavy with dread. We gathered closer around the fire, exchanging stories to distract ourselves. Laughter filled the air, but it was a fragile veneer, a thin layer over the terror gnawing at the edges of our spirits. As the night wore on, we began to sense the weight of the forest around us. It felt suffocating, a constant reminder of the chaos we had unearthed. The trees loomed ominously, looking like twisted sentinels imposing their will upon us. Just as I thought we might begin to relax, the distant sound of footsteps returned, a faint, rhythmic crunch that sent us leaping to our feet. I trained my flashlight toward the darkness, heart pounding in my chest. The forest held its breath as we squeezed into a tighter circle, eyes wide with fear. The sound drew closer, almost taunting us with every step. "Maybe it's just an animal," Jack suggested weakly, but there was no comfort in his voice. Just then, a shadow darted between the trees, wagging a momentary glimpse of movement that sent us screaming back into the tents. I felt like a child again, hiding from monsters under the covers, but there was no safety in the fabric walls of our tent. The silhouette approached slowly, deliberately, looming just outside our tent as if gauging our fear. I could almost feel its presence, an entity drawing energy from our panic. My heart raced, and I could swear I felt the weight of 1,000 eyes fixated on us. A soft rustling interrupted the silence, and I dared to peek out of the tent. The moonlight barely filtered through the dense branches, casting ghostly shadows across the ground. I could see it, a dark shape shifting just beyond the tree line. Panic surged as I stumbled back into the tent, falling over my friends, who looked equally horrified. "What did you see?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I clenched my eyes shut, trying to block the clamor of horror in my mind. I don't know. Something moved," I stammered, voice trembling. I could hear Mark murmuring quietly, trying to calm us, but the fear was an electric current connecting us all in our shared dread. Out of nowhere, a loud crash echoed through the night, followed by a sinister growl. The sound reverberated through the tent, shaking the very ground beneath us. Our camp became a cage, trapping us in our panic as we clutched one another tightly, hoping our combined fear would ward off the unnatural presence. "Should we run?" Jack suggested, his voice shaking. "We can't just sit here. That thing is out there." "No, we need to stick together," Lisa insisted, attempting to ground us in the chaos. We could only wait, hearts thundering as we listened for any signs of intruders. The growling seemed to dance around our tent, echoing from different directions, like a predator playing with its prey. I felt a cold weight settle on me, a feeling that our end was drawing closer, creeping like the shadows around us. We could hear voices, soft and unintelligible, whispering just outside. "We need to get out of here." My voice broke the suffocating calm, but no one wanted to move. I turned the flashlight toward the entrance and slowly unzipped the tent, heart racing. As the fresh air rushed in, I was hit with another wave of terror. Suddenly, an arm shot through the opening, fingers long and skeletal, almost ghostly in their grip. Mark yanked me back, slamming the tent shut just as the ghastly hand swiped into empty air, clawing for purchase. What the hell was that? It felt like we were spiraling into madness, our grasp on reality slipping as unseen forces toyed with us. The tent vibrated with the intensity of our collective fear, our breaths coming in frantic gasps. I wished desperately for the laughter we had shared only hours ago. What do you think of our encounter? Comment below with your thoughts, and let me know if you believe in the supernatural. The pounding in my chest was the only sound I could hear, thumping like a war drum against the backdrop of the forest's restless energy. The silence following the last of the growls seemed unbearable, a tense pause in nature that warned us that our turmoil was far from over. I could feel my friends' eyes on me, their collective uncertainty hovering in the air. We began to murmur ideas amidst the fear, suggestions that chased each other endlessly but led nowhere. We didn't want to abandon our tent, yet staying felt increasingly perilous. "Is it gone?" Jack whispered, peering out through the small window. Fear reflected in his eyes, but he was the curious type, needing to seek the truth even when it threatened to consume him. I don't know," I replied, each syllable trembling. The air was thick with the sensation of eyes belonging to something beyond our comprehension, watching our every move. In a moment of reckless bravery, or perhaps pure foolishness, Jack decided to make a run for it. "I'll check around the perimeter and see what we're dealing with," he announced, zipping his jacket tightly and grabbing the flashlight. "No," Lisa pleaded, grasping Jack's arm. But the hardened determination I had seen in Jack's eyes was new. He wasn't willing to sit in fear any longer. He shook her off and slipped out of the tent into the night, the darkness swallowing him whole. "Jack!" I yelled, panic rising within me. There was no response, only the sound of rustling leaves and whispers that danced through the air like an unsettling lullaby. We exchanged glances, unsure of whether to follow or wait. Minutes passed like hours, and our worry grew heavier with each breath. "He should have been back by now," Mark urged, biting his lip. "I think we should go look for him." Just as I nodded in agreement, Jack's scream pierced the night, a sound so raw that it sent shivers racing down my spine. We bolted from the tent, our flashlights flickering frantically. The world around us seemed to come alive with shadowy figures darting between the trees, their movements almost mocking as we called for our friend. "Jack!" we called, voices strangled by panic. But the silence returned, heavy and suffocating. A sudden rustling broke through the sounds of our distress, followed by a low growl that echoed all around us. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Lisa and pulling her with me as we scrambled into the woods, leaving our shelter behind. The grip of fear was merciless, shoving us further into the shadows as we chased after the echoes of Jack's voice. Branches scraped against my skin, and the damp earth squelched underfoot as we stumbled deeper into the forest. The growls grew more pronounced, circling us like a predator zeroing in on its prey. We needed to find Jack. Whatever danger lurked in the night wouldn't allow us to escape without ensuring that he was gone. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, morphed into grotesque shapes that threatened to consume us. In the distance, I believed I caught a glimpse of movement, but it dissolved before I could comprehend. "Jack, where are you?" I shouted again, but the sound felt swallowed by the haunting wilderness. As we continued running, I caught sight of an eerie glow filtering through the trees. Instinctively, I veered towards it, thinking it could be Jack's light, a beacon in the ominous dark. "This way!" I yelled to Lisa and Mark, quickening my pace. What we found at the source of the light sent a wave of nausea coursing through me. It was the cabin again, illuminated as if by a haunting beacon shining from within. Stumbling to a halt, we stood frozen, the frantic energy that had driven us now replaced by hesitated dread. "Should we go in?" Lisa breathed, her voice barely more than a whisper. The very thought made my skin crawl, but we had no choice. We had lost Jack. We had to face whatever had taken him. Taking a deep breath, we stepped into the cabin, our flashlights illuminating the same grotesque photographs that had so unnerved us before. Yet this time, they seemed different. The expressions on the faces changed, morphing from fear to an unsettling euphoria. Slowly, they began to smile, their joy curdled like the air thickening around us. Then, Without warning, we heard it again. The sound of footsteps, this time purposeful, making deliberate approaches toward us. "Jack!" I cried out again, clutching my flashlight like a weapon. But instead of our friend, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Tall, familiar, and as horrifying as my worst nightmares. "Why did you ignore my warning?" It hissed, the voice twisted and melodic in equal measure. Our fear solidified into paralyzing terror. It was the entity we had encountered earlier, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You should never have entered this place," it continued, stepping forward, the wooden floor creaking ominously. "You have trespassed into our domain." "What do you want from us?" Mark shouted, voice trembling as he stepped closer to me, expression wild with fear. "Your friend," the entity said, its voice slinking through the air, wrapping around us like fog. "He has been claimed. He will join those who have come before you." "Jack!" I screamed, feeling the last remnants of my courage devoured whole by despair. It swept into the room like a dark mist, curling around us with an icy grip. Suddenly the walls began to pulse, and the photographs came to life. Faces twisted and churned as if in agony. They reached out toward us, stretching their skeletal fingers, tempting us to join their ranks. "No!" Lisa cried, eyes wide with horror. "We have to get out!" We turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, locking us inside. "Foolish children," the figure snarled, the predatory smile widening. "You don't understand what you have entered. You cannot leave once the door has been closed." I felt defeated, the weight of every story I had heard now crashing down on me. This wasn't just a tale, it was our reality. With the sound of Jack's last scream echoing in the air, we were caught in a web of supernatural despair. As darkness thickened and the shadows crept up around us, I felt the familiar pulse of fear rising again within me. But amidst it all, something surged, an ember of persistence, fueled by the memories of happier times with our friend. "We need to find Jack," I finally shouted, rallying what remained of my strength. "Maybe we can still save him." Mark and Lisa exchanged a glance, our shared determination tempering the ferocity of the shadows around us. We turned back into the room, fueled by a simultaneous burst of courage, as we searched for another way out, a way to save our friend from the clutches of the entity lurking in the dark. If you want to hear more about bizarre encounters and hauntings, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss the next terrifying tale.